Hello there. Hi. I'm back. Thank you for bearing with me and indulging me that little bit of silliness to begin with. You may have noticed that this video is going to be about Clannad, the Irish New Age Celtic pop group. Now, before I get into it, I just want to say thank you to my lovely girlfriend Louise, who I owe her big time for helping me shoot that video, and I need to apologise to her because we shot it nearly probably 2 years ago now, and I've been messing around and not finding the inspiration to put it together, so yeah, we had to get up really early just to make sure we got there, and no one else was there. Anyway, so thank you, Louise. You're a star for indulging me. Anyway, that was shot at a place called the Druid Temple in North Yorkshire, near Masham. It was built as a folly. It's not ancient or anything like that. It was built post-war by the master of the estate, who was a bit into the occult and things like that. And it was an opportunity for him to give work to many of the people who had come back from the First World War with injuries and couldn't find work. Anyway, yeah, Clannad. Who are Clannad? Clannad are an Irish group, as I already said. They are, and let me just get this right, they are, first of all, yeah, Clannad basically means, in Gaelic, Irish Gaelic, family. So you get clan, of course. So they are Kieran, Paul and Moya Brennan, and their uncles, Noel and Podrick Dugan. And the Brennan's father, Leo, had been into music for a long, long time. He'd been in Irish dance bands, and he had a bar called Leo's Tavern in County Donegal, where they all grew up. And it's an Irish-speaking part of Ireland, and they would get opportunities to get up on stage and play from a very early age. And although they began playing sort of cover versions of Beatles and the Everly Brothers and things like that, well, it was the late 60s, they also were interested in traditional Irish music, and then that eventually took over. And in 1970 they got together as a band and called themselves Clannad. But it wouldn't be until 1973 that they'd release their first album, which is this one. Now, the initial number of albums from Clannad, it doesn't sound at all like the Clannad that a lot of people will probably be more familiar with. This is a traditional Irish folk music, but it does have progressive elements to it, like a double bass, drums in places, and this does have a cover version of Morning Dew, who I think Tim Rose did. So it's not the most traditional. A bit like Pentangle, that there's a traditional English folk music, but they're melding it to jazz and blues, and that's kind of what Clannad were doing. There is jazz elements and blues elements as well. So their second album was released in 1974, just simply called Clannad 2. This is a German repress, which is because they were very popular in Germany and across Europe. This is actually similar to the first album, but it's produced by Donald Lunny, who was in Planxty, who brings that sort of element of traditional Irishness to it. So yeah, that's very nice. So 1974. 1976, they released their third album, Dulaman, which I understand means seaweed, which you can see there in Gaelic. Now, this is the first produced by Nicky Ryan, who would be a figure that would work with them and actually become a bit of a sort of a force in moving their music along. This is actually an American pressing from 1979, obviously from the Irish American community in America. They were very, very popular. So, as I said, they were popular in Europe, and this was recorded in Switzerland in 1978, and it's released in '78 as well. So, Clannad in concert. Yeah, basically, again, it's their traditional Irish twinned with some of those more progressive elements. This is their next album, 1980, Cranul, which means apple tree, and you can see the picture there, a batik design, which is of an apple tree. This was recorded actually in Germany, in Cologne, so it shows how popular they were on the continent, especially in Germany. This is Fuaim, and this is from 1982. What is it? Fuaim means sound in Gaelic. Now, there's somebody on the cover here that you might be familiar with. Now, this is, I don't know if you can see that, Enya Brennan, the younger sister of the Brennans. Probably more famous just as Enya. So, although she recorded with them some vocals and instruments on the previous album, this is the first album that she actually appeared on as a fully fledged member of the band. It would also be the last one because as a result of the move that the band were making during this album, which has more synthesizers, which has more saxophones, pop elements, more modern sounds being added. Nicky Ryan gave an ultimatum to the band saying he wanted to take the band in a certain direction, they wanted to go in another direction, and so he left after this album, and Enya left after this album. She clearly had ideas, and she teamed up with Nicky Ryan and his wife Roma. And of course, we all know what happened there. International fame and fortune. So that's a real sort of an album that sort of progresses their sound, which sees sort of elements of where they might go, and that would happen for their next album, which is Magical Ring, and this is from 1983, and it's their first on a major label. This is on our RCA, and it leads with probably the most famous song that they did, which is the theme from Harry's Game, which was an ITV TV show based around the Troubles in Northern Ireland, and it's a departure to their sound. It's a new type of sound. It's a kind of a layered vocal arrangement with lush synthesizers all over it. I'm sure you know it. I used it at the beginning of the video, if YouTube allows it through. They recorded that, and then it's put on this album, which sees the band move in a slightly more pop direction, which is something that would be followed through later. They did a TV show for the last one. This was an album that they did for the TV series Robin of Sherwood. This is called Legend. It's from 1984. There's Michael Praed on the cover, who played Robin. And this is a bit more going back to some of their Celtic folk roots, but it also has that layered sound effect and layered vocals and synths, which would kind of define their music and actually would become something that would be called New Age music. So that's a lovely album. And then this was probably their breakout album. This is Macalla from 1985. This sees them really going in a pop direction. I think only a couple of the songs on here are in Gaelic. The rest are in English. And it has In a Lifetime, which is a duet with Bono. It's not a sound that I particularly like anymore. It was that soundtrack they did to Robin of Sherwood that probably was the thing that drew me to them. I wasn't, clearly I was probably about 14 or 11 or something when that came out. So I remember listening to it, I remember hearing it, and it was this ethereal, strange, sort of folky sound. And it was from that point that I started buying the tapes and not the records. I've subsequently bought those. And they were my first band, really. That was mine. There was no one else I knew were into them. And so they were mine. And as much as I discovered them during their sort of, I suppose, new agey pop period, it's not a period that I particularly like these days. This is from 1986. It's Ring of Gold, and this was released as a kind of a bootleg, really. It's an unofficial release, and it's obviously a release to cash in on the success that they were having internationally. And this is a recording from sometime in the late 70s or early 80s, probably on one of the tours of Germany or Switzerland. In fact, I've heard it been said that this is actually a re-release of that Clannad in Concert album that I showed earlier, but it isn't. It's got a different track listing. The songs that are the same sound different. So that's a bit of an unofficial, not quite bootleg, but not fully official live recording. And this is their album from 1987. This is Sirius. Sirius was named after. Well, Sirius, of course, is the the Greek god of the dog star, the brightest star in the sky. Which is called Sirius. Well, that's Cirrus, isn't it? Anyway, but Sirius was also the name of the Greenpeace boat that they started to become very interested in, the sort of ecological issues that Greenpeace were promoting. And this sees the band go to LA to record some of it. And actually, it was recorded by, what are their names? Greg Ladagny and Ross Kunkel, who were big names and worked with everyone in that sort of West Coast LA California rock scene. Jackson Browne, James Taylor. And this also has Bruce Hornsby and J.D. Souther on it. It's probably one of their weaker albums for me. It's not a great one. I think this is where I kind of jumped ship, really. I wasn't really interested in anything they did after this. The next album they released was called Atlantic Realm. I've got that on tape somewhere, which was a soundtrack to a BBC TV series. And then he did a soundtrack to an animation called The Angel and the Soldier Boy, which I've also got on tape somewhere. But that's kind of it, really. They then sort of went big. They had lots of tunes in soundtracks to films, The Last of the Mohicans. I think they had a song that was written for Braveheart, but actually didn't end up on the soundtrack. Anyway, this is the last release by them. This is from 2018. It's called Taurus 1980, and it was recorded in Bremen, Germany. It's a live recording, so it's got that similar old folk traditional sound that their earlier stuff does. It's a beautiful, beautiful record, double album, really nice there. Anyway, so that's Clannad. Thank you for indulging me that bit at the beginning. I just wanted to keep this as short as possible because not everyone is interested in Clannad. Like I said, they're very much got kind of two periods, I suppose three periods. First period of the 70s, which was a kind of a progressive traditional folk music. You then get their Celtic pop in the 80s and into the 90s, and to today, they're a kind of a new age folk Celtic sound. So there you go, Clannad, my first favourite band. So until I'm back with another video, thanks for watching. Bye bye for now.